all the Jews have to go. So what I'm trying to say is that despite the fact that you have these massive majorities in both Israel and Palestine who are totally willing to live side by side, who are completely willing to withdraw to the 67 borders, to share Jerusalem, to forget about the right of return, who have fully and thoroughly accepted the so-called two-state solution, these tiny, tiny minorities on either side, on the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, have kept that from happening for 60 years now. How? Well, on the Israeli side, you have these sort of radical Zionists. You know, I've told you this term already before, Eretz Israel. Did I introduce this term to you? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel is the rallying cry of these sort of radical Zionist groups. What it means is the whole of the land of Israel, or what they really refer to as biblical Israel. That's what they're talking about. They're saying, no. See, our loyalty is not to the state of Israel. I mean, even if tomorrow Netanyahu woke up and said, you know what, I changed my mind, 2 states, sounds good, you know, we're for it, let's do it. These Israelis would say, absolutely not. Because their loyalty is not to the prime minister. Their loyalty is not to the government of Israel. Their loyalty is to the biblical land of Israel. They believe that they are fulfilling the Bible. The Bible's promise, the promise made by God to Moses, that all of this land would belong to the inheritors of Abraham, right? This is the land of milk and honey, promised them, promised their forefathers by God himself. So for them, the notion of splitting the country in half and giving half to the Palestinians, even if it's not half, even if it's just 20%, absolutely not. They will not abide by it. They want all of it because they believe that God gave them that land. Now, unfortunately, even though this is a small number of people, they are politically active. In fact, they have their own political parties. You have to understand that Israel is a parliamentary system, not like we have in the United States. We have 2 political parties in this country. By the way, it's why we can't ever get anything done, because they're just sort of equal on each side, and neither will let the other side do anything. Parliamentary system has dozens and dozens of parties. Dozens, some big, some small. The problem in a parliamentary system is that in order to govern, you need a majority of the seats. So in Israel, in the Israeli parliament, there are 120 seats. So, in order to govern, in order to be in charge of the government, you need 61 seats. Now, it's really hard for any one party to get 61 seats. It's very hard. And so what does that party have to do? He has to make coalitions with smaller parties. So let's say my party, you know, I belong to the Likud party, the party that's currently in charge of Israel right now. Likud is L-I-K-U-D. The Likud party, very conservative, hard-right party. They, you know, managed to get, let's say, you know, 51 votes, 51 seats. So they need 10 more seats in order to form a majority. Where do they get those 10 seats? Well, they go to these small parties that have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 seats. And they say, come join our coalition. And they join the coalition, and they get 61 seats, and now they're the government. The problem is that these small parties are, for the most part, these radical, right-wing Eretz Israel parties. Parties that don't have massive public support in Israel. They can barely get maybe 1 or 2 seats parliament. And yet, those 1 or 2 seats is enough because they're now part of this coalition. And if the coalition tries to do anything, let's say the Likud party, says, okay, we want a two-state solution, that one radical party with only 2 seats can say, no thanks, and withdraw from the coalition collapses, the government collapses, and you have to do a new vote again. This has happened so many times that in the last 3 decades, no single Israeli government has ever actually finished a term. Never. They start a term, they get this coalition, they begin to pass laws. One of those laws rubs somebody in the coalition wrong, so they withdraw, the government collapses, we have to start all over again. Brand new election, start over. This has happened every single term for almost 3 decades in Israel. That's where the power of no on the Israeli side comes. 89% say yes, 11% say no, but that 11% can stop any law from passing in Israel simply by withdrawing from the coalition. On the Palestinian side, 79% say yes to this, 21% say no. What's the 21% power? Well, in Israel, the power is the government, but there's no government in Palestine. So the power of that 21%, the veto of that 21% of Palestinians who don't want 2 states, is a suicide bomber. It's as simple as that. You want to put a stop to a conversation? You want to put a stop to a meeting between the Israelis and the Palestinians whose purpose is 2 states? Just blow up a bus. It's over. Conversation over. Peace plan over. And just as in the other side, this has happened repeatedly. I can't tell you how many times over the last 3 decades Israelis and the Palestinians have been very, very close to coming up with some kind of solution, some kind of way to get around this impasse when all of a sudden some Palestinian blows himself up and a bunch of school children on a bus in Jerusalem. And that's that. The process is over, the discussion is done, back to where we started. Which of course is the purpose. It's the whole purpose of what these suicide bombers are trying to do. So that gives you an understanding about why it is that despite these overwhelming majorities on both sides who want a 2-state solution, we still haven't had one yet. Now, because this is a class on religion and politics, I feel like I need to add one extra problem to this.